The first time I saw the sign outside the Whitmore Grand Hotel that day, I thought I'd made it. The second time, I realized I'd just been written out of my own daughter's life. I parked my Ford F-250 on the far edge of the lot, away from the gleaming Teslas and imported sedans lined up like showroom displays. The sky over Charleston was bruised with heavy spring clouds, the kind that make you think the world's holding its breath before a storm. In my passenger seat sat a gift box wrapped in silver paper. My own hands had tied the ribbon that morning. I'd been rehearsing my smile all the way there. 30 years of my life had been built for this day. Not for me, but for Lily. She was the reason I took double shifts after her mum passed, the reason I put off my own retirement to expand the company just one more year, the reason I never once bought a new boat, even though I've wanted one since I was 19. I walked toward the glass doors, straightened my tie and stepped inside. The lobby was all marble and glass, with bouquets of white tulips and hydrangeas along every table. I recognized them, not the flowers themselves, but the style. They were from Petals & Co., Charleston's priciest florist. I'd signed the invoice myself. Halfway across the ballroom, I spotted Lily. Her dress was ivory lace, custom from New York. The train fanned out behind her like she was floating. I'd wired the $18,000 deposit to the designer 6 months ago. She turned at the sound of my boots against the polished floor. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Dad, you shouldn't be here." I laughed, the nervous, automatic kind that escapes before your brain catches up. "Of course I should. It's your wedding." "No," she said softly, glancing toward a cluster of guests in black tie. "You weren't invited." I froze. It felt like someone had reached into my chest and just twisted. "What?" "I didn't know how to say it without hurting you," she said, voice barely above a whisper. It's more of a private event, just close family." Close family. I'd raised her alone since she was 4. Behind her, Ryan, the groom, appeared. Navy tuxedo. Smile like he'd just closed a deal. "Mr. Hayes," he said, nodding politely, "I think there's been a miscommunication." "There's no miscommunication," I said, my voice tightening. "I paid for this wedding, every plate of food, every drop of champagne, that dress, those flowers." Ryan's jaw flexed. "Money doesn't mean you fit in here." Lily flinched, but didn't contradict him. Around us, the music faltered. I caught women in sequined gowns whispering behind manicured hands, men adjusting their cufflinks, like the whole thing was mildly inconvenient. I wanted to tell them about the nights I worked until 3 a.m., hauling lumber, about how I sold my fishing boat to cover Lily's tuition, about how I'd built Hayes Contracting from nothing to keep a roof over her head. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I set the gift box on the nearest table. "I don't want to embarrass you," I said, my voice quieter now. "I'll go." I memorized her face one last time before turning. The green eyes she got from her mother. The mouth I'd once kissed goodnight 1,000 times. I walked out through the lobby, past the concierge pretending not to watch. Outside, the air hit me like a slap. My truck looked small against the wall of imported steel and glass in the parking lot. I unlocked it, climbed in, and stared at the hotel doors in my rearview mirror. It wasn't anger that settled in my chest. It was clarity. I'd given Lily 30 years of my time, my money, my loyalty. She'd just told me, in front of half of Charleston's high society, that it wasn't enough. Fine. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a number I hadn't dialed in months, my banker at First Federal. My thumb hovered for just a second before pressing call. It rang once. "First Federal, this is Patricia." "Patricia," I said, my voice calm. "This is Daniel Hayes. I need to freeze every payment scheduled today related to the Whitmore Grand wedding. Venue, catering, flowers, music, all of it." There was a pause. "Sir, are you sure? Those are substantial amounts." "I'm sure." Outside my windshield, the clouds over Charleston grew darker. swallowing the afternoon light. The storm was coming, and this time I wasn't standing in the rain without an umbrella. If this moment hit you in the gut the way it hit me, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. I'd like to know who's out there hearing this. And if you want more stories that cut this deep, give the video a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. The first flash of lightning split the sky as I pulled out of the lot. Charleston Harbor was all steel-grey water and wind-whipped palms, a perfect backdrop for what was about to happen. Patricia was still on the line. "Mr. Hayes, I'll need your verbal codes for transactions over 10,000. I gave them from memory. You don't run a construction business for 30 years without knowing your numbers. One by one, I listed the accounts tied to the Whitmore Grand. Venue rental, $42,000. Catering, $37,500. Flowers, $9,800. Photography, $7,200. String quartet, $4,600. Implementation will be immediate, she said. Good. Thank you, Patricia. I ended the call and dialed my second number. Southern Pallet Catering, a man answered, voice bright. This is Marcus. Marcus, Daniel Hayes. I'm calling about the Whitmore wedding happening right now. Oh, yes, sir. It's going beautifully. I'm afraid the payment authorization has been revoked. My advice? Protect your inventory and equipment. Silence. Then, sir, the main course hasn't even gone out yet. Then it's the perfect time to save yourself a loss, I said evenly. Speak to the bride and groom about alternative arrangements. I hung up before the pleading could start. The florist was next. Charleston Blooms, a woman answered, cheer in her voice. This is Daniel Hayes. The authorization for the Whitmore wedding arrangements has been cancelled. You'll need to retrieve them if you want them back. They're integrated into the altar and table designs. Business is business, I said, the words almost tasting foreign in my mouth. By the time I finished the last call, the quartet's manager, the rain had started in earnest. I swung the truck into a gas station across from the hotel. From there, I had a clear view of the side service entrance. At 3:22 p.m., a white van marked Charleston Blooms pulled up. The driver and two assistants stepped out carrying empty bins. They disappeared into the side door. A few minutes later, through the tall glass windows, I saw the first arrangement, a 12-foot arc of white hydrangeas, lifted from the head table. Guests turned, their confusion visible even from this distance. Inside the ballroom, Lily appeared, her lace dress a stark contrast to the black suits of the staff dismantling her altar. Her hands moved quickly as she spoke to the florist, but the woman only shook her head and kept working. Ryan's shoulders squared, and even from across the street, I could tell his jaw was tight. At 3:37 p.m., the catering truck rolled up. Marcus himself went in, clipboard in hand. 10 minutes later, the buffet tables began disappearing behind white sheets. I imagined the murmurs inside, the champagne flutes pausing mid-air, the polite confusion turning sharp. By 3:45, the string quartet's cases were snapping shut. The lights over the dance floor dimmed, as if the room itself was preparing for an early ending. The calls would come soon. I knew it. I sat back in my seat, rain drumming on the roof of the truck. Sure enough, at 3:52, my phone lit up. Lily. I let it go to voicemail. The second call came before the first had even finished ringing out. Then a third. By the fourth, I could almost hear her voice in my head, the same tone she'd used at 16 when her BMW's engine blew because she'd never checked the oil. Not panic yet, not remorse, just the assumption that I'd fix it. But this time, I wasn't stepping in. Across the street, I saw her standing in the doorway now, phone pressed to her ear, scanning the lot like she could summon me by will. Her dress clung to her ankles in the damp air. The man beside her, Ryan, was gesturing sharply toward the staff, carting out the last of the flowers. The storm over Charleston broke open fully then, rain coming down in sheets, lightning flashing over the harbor. And I sat in my truck, hands steady on the wheel, watching 30 years of entitlement start to dissolve in real time. The sixth call came in at 4:07 p.m. By then, the rain had eased just enough to turn the asphalt into a shimmering mirror of brake lights and storm clouds. I let it ring out again. The seventh came 30 seconds later. I answered. "Dad!" Her voice cracked right at the start. The ballroom hum was gone. In its place was the echo of a hallway. What's happening? The florist just... They're taking everything. The caterers left in the middle of dinner service. The band's gone. People are asking questions. They'll get their answers, I said, keeping my tone level. From you. From me? I don't understand. Lily, this is simple. Every vendor here was paid with my money. You made it clear I wasn't welcome at the wedding I paid for, so I stopped paying. Silence. Just the faint hiss of rain on her end. You can't do that, she said finally, voice tightening into that familiar blend of outrage and disbelief. It's my wedding day. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? I have an excellent idea, I said. I've had 2 hours to think about it. Dad, please, do you know how much I've spent on you in the last 30 years? Why are we talking about that now? Because you've never asked before. Guess. I don't know. A lot, obviously. Over $800,000, I said. School, cars, rent, the down payment on your townhouse, every vacation, every emergency. And today, this. That's impossible, she said quickly, like snapping the words would make them true. I have the records, I said, and now so do you. I reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a thick manila envelope, one I'd put together over the years without really knowing why. Tuition invoices, loan payoffs, repair bills, receipts from Bloomingdale's and Neiman Marcus, where she'd just put it on Dad's card. I don't need to see. Yes, you do, I said, my voice cutting through hers for the first time in years. Because this conversation, it's the start of something you've never had to live with before. Consequences. She was quiet for a long moment. I could hear muffled voices in the background, Ryan's sharper now, clipped and angry. They're saying we have to pay the balance before we can stay here tonight, she said finally, almost to herself. We don't have that kind of money. I know, I said. So, what do we do? That, I told her, is entirely up to you. But I won't be footing the bill. The sound she made wasn't quite a sob and wasn't quite anger, more like someone realizing the map they'd been following their whole life just ended at a cliff. Dad, she said finally, softer now, please, can we talk? Just, please. Not tonight, I said. Tonight you figure out how to land on your feet. Call me tomorrow if you want to talk about the future, but be ready to talk like an adult. I hung up before she could answer. Outside, the harbor wind shifted, carrying the smell of rain and salt through my open window. For the first time all day, I felt something close to peace. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because of guilt. That part of me was dead and buried after she told me I didn't belong, but because my mind wouldn't stop cataloguing every bill, every deposit, every choice I'd made in 30 years that bent my life around hers. By sunrise, my kitchen table was covered in manila folders and coffee rings. One folder read, education, another, housing. Others, transportation, lifestyle, medical, weddings, sat in neat rows like evidence in a trial. I'd built Hayes Contracting on meticulous records. I was about to use those same habits for something more personal. My phone buzzed at 6:43 a.m. A text from Lily. We had to leave the hotel. They said we couldn't stay without paying balance. Another followed. Ryan's furious. He says I should have been upfront with him about relying on you for everything. I stared at the words. Not a single "I'm sorry," not even "thank you." Just a play-by-play of her crumbling evening, like I was still the emergency switch she could flip. By 7:15 I got the first call of the day. I let it go to voicemail, then I pressed play. Her voice was smaller now. Dad, please. I'm at Ryan's parents' house. They're asking questions I don't know how to answer. He wants to know if you'll at least cover the hotel so we can go back. I pictured Ryan in one of those pressed Oxford shirts, sleeves rolled, trying to manage the optics for his family. I'd seen men like him before, more concerned about the golf club chatter than the work that paid for it. The second voicemail came an hour later. This time, she was crying. He says this marriage is already a mistake, that he didn't know how bad I was with money. I don't know what to do. I set my coffee down and opened the education file. Tuition invoices for Middleton Academy, 1999 to 2011, $12,000 a year at the start, up to $21,000 by the end. I ran the numbers, $230,000 before she'd even turned 18. College, University of South Carolina, full dorm, meal plan, summer courses in Boston for networking. 4 years, $148,000. That didn't include the $3,400 I wired during her sophomore year to replace the MacBook she spilled wine on during a sorority mixer. I made a new spreadsheet and typed the first entries, hands moving automatically. Line after line, the picture sharpened. 30 years of sacrifice, and not once had she asked how it all added up. By noon, I had totals that made even me sit back. Education alone, $378,000. I texted my attorney, Martha Reynolds. We'd known each other since high school. Need you to review 30 years of personal financial support records. Wanted airtight. Her reply came 2 minutes later. Bring everything. I'll clear my afternoon. As I closed the folders, my phone buzzed again. A photo from Lily. She was sitting on the edge of a guest bed, mascara smudged, dress hanging in the background like a ghost. The caption read, "I feel like I lost everything last night." I didn't reply. She hadn't lost everything. Not yet. But by the time I was done, she'd finally understand the price tag on the life she'd been living. By the time I walked into Martha Reynolds' office that afternoon, the March air had turned warm and sticky, the way Charleston sometimes does right before spring really takes hold. Her office smelled faintly of leather and old paper, a comforting mix for anyone who's ever had to make hard decisions in a conference room. She was standing at the head of the table in a navy suit, her silver hair pulled back tight. "You brought the files?" she asked. I set the banker's box down with a weighty thud. 30 years of them. She slid on her reading glasses, flipping the top folder open. Middleton Academy tuition, university housing, BMW lease buyouts. She gave me a sideways look. "You weren't kidding." "I want it airtight," I said. "Every cent accounted for, every receipt, every date. If we do this, I don't want her saying I pulled numbers out of the air." Martha closed the folder, sat down, and steepled her fingers. "So the question is, what do you want to do with this?" I sat across from her. "I'm done paying for a lifestyle she treats like a birthright. I want her to understand the number attached to it, all of it. And I want the legal standing to collect." Her eyebrows rose. "You want to reclassify 30 years of parental support as loans?" "No. I want to classify 30 years of unreciprocated investment as a debt. There's a difference." Martha leaned back in her chair. "You realize the optics. People will say you're suing your daughter. She already ran me out of her wedding and told people I didn't belong there," I said. "The optics are already bad. The difference is, mine will come with documentation." We spent the next 2 hours combing through the records. She flagged anything that could be disputed and suggested how to word the demand letter so it wouldn't read as an emotional outburst, but as a clear business transaction. At one point, she tapped a folder labeled Housing. "This here? $2,100 a month for that King Street apartment after college?" 3 years, I said. "That's almost $76,000 just in rent," she said, scribbling the total, "not counting utilities, furniture, insurance." By the end of the meeting, she had the numbers lined up like soldiers. Education, $378,000 housing, $118,000 transportation, $142,000 lifestyle and travel, $92,000 medical, $47,000 wedding, $105,000 total, $882,000. All documented, all traceable, Martha said, tapping the final page. If she doesn't pay or settle, we file suit in 30 days. And the letter, I asked. You'll have it by tomorrow morning. When I left her office, the sun was setting over the Ashley River, turning the water into a molten sheet of orange and gold. My phone buzzed as I reached the truck. A text from Lily. Ryan's family says I should come stay with them until things calm down. I think they're just trying to keep me away from you. Another followed immediately. I don't know who to trust. I didn't respond. Trust is earned, and after 30 years she was about to learn what it costs to lose it. The letter went out by courier at 10:14 a.m. the next morning. Martha had drafted it herself, 3 pages, single-spaced, on thick cream paper with her firm's letterhead embossed at the top. It was as cold and professional as any business demand I'd ever seen. Reimbursement of documented financial support, 1993-2023. It laid out every category, every receipt, every total, down to the penny, $882,000. Payment due within 30 days or civil action would commence. A signature was required upon delivery. At 10:57 a.m., my phone buzzed. Courier confirmed receipt. Signed by Lily Hayes Whitmore. I didn't have to wait long. At 11:08 a.m., the first call came in. I let it go to voicemail. By 11:13, I had 3 more missed calls and a text. Dad, what the hell is this? You can't be serious. At 11:21, another text. 800,000? That's insane. None of that was a loan. I ignored it. By 11:40, she tried a different tactic. We can work this out without lawyers. Just call me, please. At 12:15, Martha called. She rang my office directly. Tried to argue that parental support isn't collectible. What did you tell her? That you're not collecting on parental support. You're collecting on documented expenditures rendered under the expectation of reciprocity, which in this case never came. I could almost hear Lily's disbelief through the silence. She'd spent her whole life thinking money just appeared. The public side of the fallout started faster than I expected. By 3 p.m., an acquaintance in the Charleston Builders Association sent me a screenshot from a local Facebook group. Someone had posted a filtered wedding photo of Lily in the ballroom, followed by a paragraph claiming her vindictive father had sabotaged her big day over a petty disagreement. The comments came fast. Sympathy for her, outrage at me, the whole internet jury ready to hand down a sentence. What they didn't have yet were the facts. By 4:30, I'd gotten 2 calls from business contacts asking if the rumors were true. I told them the same thing. I have the paperwork, and when the time's right, so will you. At 5:02, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a Charleston Gazette reporter I'd met years ago when we were both guests at a Rotary fundraiser. I'm hearing some wild things about you and your daughter, she said. Do you want to give a statement? Not today, I said, but soon. That night, I sat at my kitchen table again, folders spread out like a battle map. The letter was the first shot. The public record would be the second, and by then she wouldn't just be answering to me. She'd be answering to anyone who'd ever believed her version of the truth. By Monday morning, the whispers had grown teeth. A city like Charleston doesn't run on public transportation or convenience stores. It runs on golf course chatter, charity galas, and the quiet deals struck in the back corners of country clubs. And in those circles, perception was currency. At 8:03 a.m., I called the Charleston Gazette reporter back. You wanted a statement, I said. I've got more than that. I've got 30 years of documentation. Her voice sharpened instantly. You're willing to go on the record? Yes. And I want every number printed exactly as it appears. By 9:15, I was in Martha's office again, sliding stacks of photocopied receipts and spreadsheets across her desk. She reviewed each one, nodding as if she were ticking off a checklist for trial. "Once this goes public," she said, "there's no walking it back." "I'm not walking anywhere," I said. "I'm standing exactly where I should have stood years ago." We arranged a press briefing at the Gazette's conference room for 11 a.m. It wasn't about theatrics. It was about making sure every outlet in the city got the same story at the same time. When the cameras rolled, I kept my voice steady, my tone matter of fact. I didn't embellish. I didn't insult. I didn't gloat. "I've provided my daughter, Lily Hayes Whitmore, with financial support totaling $882,000 over the last 30 years, I said. "Every cent is documented. Every expense is accounted for. I'm no longer in a position, financially or personally, to continue that support without accountability. This is not about revenge. This is about boundaries." Then I laid out the categories, the totals, the receipts. Copies were handed to every reporter in the room. By 1 p.m., and the first online article went live. "Charleston contractor publishes 30 years of financial records after daughter's wedding fallout." The comments section was brutal, but this time, not for me. "She had 3 cars bought for her and still treats him like this. I'd kill for my dad to pay my college, let alone my wedding. This isn't petty, this is a lifetime of sacrifice." By evening, the local news had picked it up. My phone buzzed non-stop with messages from clients, old friends, even competitors. "You did what I wish I'd had the backbone to do," one text read. But the most telling reaction wasn't public. It came at 6:42 p.m. in the form of a single-line text from Lily. Ryan moved out. No apology, no admission, just the latest fact she couldn't control. I didn't reply, because this wasn't about who stayed in her life anymore. It was about who she became without me funding it. Ryan didn't just move out. He vanished. Lily told me later she heard the front door at 5:12 a.m., the sound of a suitcase wheel catching on the threshold, the faint click of the deadbolt turning from the outside. No goodbye, no note, no fight, just absence. By mid-morning she texted me again. "His family says I should regroup. That's code for don't come around." It was the first time I'd seen her admit she wasn't welcome somewhere. The next 3 days were a slow-motion slide. Credit cards declined. Her phone service briefly cut off. The few friends who answered her calls suddenly had a lot going on, or family in town. By Thursday, she sent another text. "I need to work. Can you tell me where to start?" I stared at it for a full minute. Where to start? When you've never paid your own rent, bought your own groceries, or filed your own taxes, where to start is like asking which side of a ladder to climb first. I typed back, "Get a job. Any job. Service, retail, admin, whatever will hire you tomorrow, then we'll talk." "That's Saturday," she called. "I have an interview," she said quickly. "Where?" "Front desk at a hotel downtown, the Harbor View." "Good. Be early. Dress like you're there to do the job, not like you're there to be noticed." I didn't tell her I knew the GM, didn't tell her I'd already called him, told him to treat her like any other walk-in applicant. When Monday came, she texted me after. "I think it went okay. They said they'd call." She didn't get the job. 2 more rejections followed that week, both for entry-level receptionist roles. By the 3rd week, she was applying anywhere, coffee shops, a grocery store, even a dog-walking service. Finally, she landed a cashier position at a hardware store on the edge of town, $10 an hour, 20 hours a week to start. The first time she texted me about a shift, I almost missed it. "Closing tonight. On my feet the whole time. Never knew it was this tiring." I typed back one word, "good," because exhaustion is a kind of teacher, and right now she needed all the education she could get. Her first paycheck was $412.36 after taxes. She sent me a picture of it, like proof she'd run a marathon. "Not much, but it's mine," the text read. I stared at those words for a long time. In 30 years, she'd never once framed money in terms of earning it. 2 days later, she called on her lunch break. I could hear the beeping of the hardware store registers in the background. "Dad," she said, "I bought groceries, real ones, not takeout. It's weird, but it feels good." "What'd you get?" "Bread, peanut butter, milk, eggs, apples, stuff that'll last. I kept it under $40. There was pride in her voice, the kind that doesn't come from swiping a credit card, but from calculating in your head and making it work. "That's a start," I said. The conversation drifted, awkward at first, but softer than it had been in months. She asked about the business. I told her about a big renovation project downtown. For a moment, it was almost like talking to her at 16, before the BMWs and the weekend trips to Miami. But the deadline was a shadow in the room. We were 12 days from the 30-day mark on the demand letter, and she hadn't paid a dime. On a Friday night, she showed up at my place unannounced. She looked smaller somehow, not physically, but in the way people do when the scaffolding's been stripped away. Her hair was tied back, no makeup, her nails were bare. "I'm not here to ask for money," she said before I could speak. I wanted you to see me, not the version that used to show up with shopping bags or some story about why I needed another check. Me." I gestured for her to sit. She didn't. "I can't pay you what I owe, not all at once, but I've been working on a plan. If you'll let me, I want to pay something every month, even if it's small, just to show you I mean it." The old Lily would have said that to buy time. This Lily, standing in front of me, smelling faintly of dust and pine sol, sounded like she'd actually thought about it. "I'll think about it," I said. "But thinking about it doesn't erase the deadline." "I know," she said quietly. "And if I miss it, I want you to do what you have to do. No more saving me from myself." For the first time since that day in the ballroom, I believed her. The morning of the deadline was cool and clear. Charleston in one of those rare moods where the air feels clean and the streets smell faintly of the ocean. I'd been up since 5, the demand letter on my desk, the clock in my head ticking louder with every hour. At 8:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Lily. "Can I come over?" When she arrived, she was carrying a plain white envelope. No fancy stationery, no shopping bag hidden behind her back, just the envelope. She sat at my kitchen table and slid it across to me. Inside was a cashier's check for $412.36, her entire first paycheck. "It's all I have," she said, "and I know it's not enough, but it's a start. I want to make a start." I looked at the check, then at her. She wasn't looking at me. Her eyes were fixed on the grain of the table, like she was afraid I'd see too much if she met my gaze. "I can't undo what I did," she went on. "Kicking you out of the wedding, letting Ryan talk about you like you didn't matter. I was awful. I thought love meant you'd just always be there, no matter what I did. And you were. Until you weren't. And it's the best thing you've ever done for me." Her voice cracked on that last sentence, but she didn't cry. "I don't want this to be charity," she said. "I want it to be a debt I pay, month by month, for as long as it takes. Because maybe that's the only way I'll ever learn." The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. I set the envelope down between us. "You're right about one thing," I said. "Love isn't just being there. It's teaching someone how to be there for themselves." She nodded, still not looking up. "I'm not forgiving the debt," I said, "but I'm giving you time. And I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it because I finally believe you're willing to earn it." She let out a breath she'd been holding, her shoulders sagging just a little. "Thank you, Dad." I reached across the table and covered her hand with mine. "This isn't the end of it, Lily, but maybe it's the start of something better." When she finally met my eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Not the girl I'd raised, not the woman who'd taken me for granted, but someone in between. Someone trying. It wasn't absolution, but it was enough for now.